Chapter 1. Blood on the cobblestone. As the alley smelled like rain and rust, Elena pressed her back against the damp brick wall, her breath shallow, her ribs screaming with every inhale. Her vision swam. The side of her face throbbed, where Marcus had struck her once, twice, 3 times before she'd finally twisted free and run. She should have seen it coming, should have recognized the signs, his sudden generosity, the way he'd isolated her from friends, the controlling questions disguised as concern. But grief made you stupid. Grief made you cling to anyone who offered warmth in the cold months after your mother's death. Now she was alone in the old quarter of Ashenmoor, blocks from the main streets, with blood trickling down her temple and her phone shattered. Somewhere in Marcus's apartment, footsteps echoed behind her. Elena, Marcus's voice was calm, almost gentle. That was worse than shouting. Come on, let's talk about this. She pushed off the wall and stumbled deeper into the alley, past overflowing dumpsters and broken street lamps. The old city sprawled around her like a labyrinth, 18th century. Buildings leaning into one another, narrow passages that twisted back on themselves. Tourists loved it. Right now, Elena would have killed for a well-lit highway. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Marcus called. Closer now. Elena's heel caught on uneven cobblestones. She went down hard, palms scraping stone, and bit back a cry. When she looked up, Marcus stood at the mouth of the alley, silhouetted against the distant glow of streetlights. He wasn't a large man. Average height, slim build, wire-rimmed glasses. The kind of person you'd trust to hold your coffee while you tied your shoe. That was the worst part, how normal he looked, how reasonable he'd seemed. You embarrass me tonight, he said quietly, walking toward her. In front of my colleagues. Do you know how that looked? Elena's fingers closed around a piece of broken brick. Stay back. Or what? He crouched down, just out of reach, and smiled. You'll throw that at me? Elena, I'm trying to help you. You're unstable. You've been unstable since your mother died. Everyone can see it. The gaslighting was so smooth it almost worked. Almost made her doubt herself, question whether she'd overreacted when he'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise, when he'd blocked the door and told her she wasn't leaving until she apologized. Help me by letting me go, Elena said. Marcus sighed. That's not how this works. He reached for her, and then he was gone. Not gone, moved. Yanked backwards so fast Elena's eyes couldn't track it. One moment Marcus was there, hand extended. The next he was 10 feet away, slammed against the opposite wall with enough force to crack the brick. A man stood between them. No, not a man. Elena's hindbrain screamed warnings her conscious mind couldn't process. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes that might have been expensive once, a long coat over a shirt and trousers that looked tailored but worn. His hair was black, shoulder length, pulled back carelessly, but it was his face that made her breath stop. Sharp, inhumanly beautiful, pale as moonlight, and his eyes red, not brown, not hazel, not even a trick of the light. Red, like wine held up to firelight, like garnets, like nothing that should exist in a human face. Marcus wheezed, clutching his ribs. What the fuck? The stranger moved again. One moment he stood still. The next his hand was around Marcus's throat, lifting him off the ground as easily as Elena might lift a child's toy. Who? The stranger said, his voice soft and terrible. The fuck hit you? It took Elena a moment to realize he was speaking to her. Marcus clawed at the hand holding him, feet kicking uselessly. Let go. The stranger's head tilted slightly, studying Marcus with clinical detachment. Interesting. You smell like cheap cologne and entitlement. His eyes, those impossible red eyes, flicked to Elena. And you smell like blood. Whose fault is that? Elena opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The stranger's grip tightened. Marcus made a choking sound. I asked you a question, little mortal. Answer me, or I'll assume your silence grants me permission to handle this as I see fit. He hit me, Elena whispered. But please don't what? The stranger smiled, showing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. Don't give him what he deserves. Don't teach him that hitting women has consequences. He looked back at Marcus, who had gone gray with terror. I could kill you. It would be easy. No one would find your body for weeks, and by then, there wouldn't be enough left to identify. Marcus whimpered, but, the stranger continued, almost conversational. My companion would disapprove of murder in public spaces. She's tedious about mortal laws. So instead he dropped Marcus, who collapsed to his knees, gasping. You're going to walk away. North. toward the main streets. You will not look back. You will not speak to anyone about what you saw here. And if you ever, the stranger crouched down, bringing his face level with Marcus's, if you ever come near this woman again, I will reconsider my stance on public murder. Do we understand each other? Marcus nodded frantically. Good. Run along. Marcus ran, staggered really, one hand pressed to his ribs, but he moved faster than Elena had ever seen him move, disappearing around the corner without a backward glance. Silence fell over the alley. The stranger stood slowly, brushing imaginary dust from his coat. Then he turned to Elena, and she realized with a jolt of fresh terror that she was alone in a dark alley with something that was definitely, absolutely not human. You're bleeding, he observed. Head wounds always look worse than they are, but that one should be cleaned. Do you live nearby? Elena pressed herself back against the wall. What are you? His expression didn't change. Dangerous, but not to you apparently, or I would have fed instead of playing hero. He stepped closer, and Elena's body locked up, torn between the instinct to run and the knowledge that she'd never make it 3 steps. Can you walk? Don't come any closer, I'm not going to hurt you. He sounded almost offended. I just saved your life. Well, saved you from a beating at minimum. Does that usually inspire this level of terror? Your eyes are red, Elena said faintly. Observant, he tilted his head, studying her the way someone might study an interesting painting. You're in shock. Understandable. Let me simplify. That man will not bother you again. You are safe, but you're also injured, alone, and clearly in no state to take care of yourself. So I'll ask once more, do you live nearby? Or do you need help getting somewhere secure? Elena's mind spun. Nothing about this made sense. The speed, the strength, those impossible eyes, the casual way he'd nearly killed Marcus, the house of Thorn will have words with me if I leave an injured mortal bleeding in an alley, the stranger muttered, almost to himself. Especially after the incident last month. As if that was my fault. House of what? Elena whispered, those red eyes focused on her again, sharp and assessing. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, you should forget you saw me. He turned to leave. Wait, the word left her mouth before she could stop it. The stranger paused, looking back over his shoulder. Elena didn't know why she'd spoken, didn't know what she wanted. Except she was bleeding and terrified and alone, and this creature had protected her, had stopped Marcus, had made her feel, for one strange moment, like someone gave a damn whether she lived or died. Thank you, she said quietly. Something flickered across his face. Surprise maybe, or something older and sadder. You're welcome, he said finally. Now go home, lock your doors, and pray we never meet again. Then he was gone, disappeared into the shadows as if he'd never existed at all, leaving Elena alone in the alley with blood drying on her temple, and her entire understanding of the world cracked open like an egg. Chapter 2. The Watcher in the Dark. Elena didn't go home. She couldn't. Marcus had a key to her apartment. She'd given it to him 3 weeks ago. Back when she'd still believed his concern was love, his control was care. The thought of walking into her own space and finding him there, waiting, made her stomach turn. Instead, she walked. The old quarter of Ashenmoor transformed after midnight. Gas lamps flickered in their iron cages, casting pools of amber light across rain-slicked cobblestones. The buildings leaned close, their upper stories nearly touching across narrow streets, creating tunnels of shadow that swallowed sound. Most of the shops were dark, their windows reflecting nothing but Elena's own pale face. As she passed, she touched the cut on her temple gently. The bleeding had stopped, but her head throbbed with every heartbeat. She needed ice, antiseptic, sleep. What she had was an empty bank account, a destroyed phone, and nowhere to go. Her best friend lived 2 hours away. Her co-workers were friendly, but not close. She'd kept them at arm's length after her mother's death, too raw to handle their well-meaning sympathy. There was a women's shelter on the east side, but the thought of explaining everything, of sitting in a fluorescent-lit room, filling out forms while strangers asked questions, made her throat close. So she walked, trying to ignore the feeling that she was being followed. ID had started 10 minutes ago. Nothing obvious, no footsteps, no shadows moving in the corner of her vision. Just a prickling awareness between her shoulder blades, an animal certainty that she wasn't alone. Elena turned down a side street lined with closed cafes and antique shops. The feeling intensified. I know you're there, she said to the empty street. Silence. Then, from somewhere above, interesting. Most mortals can't sense me. Elena spun around. The stranger from the alley sat on a second-story balcony railing, balanced with impossible ease, one leg drawn up, the other dangling. His red eyes gleamed in the darkness. "Why are you following me?" Elena demanded, proud that her voice barely shook. "I'm not following you. I'm ensuring you get somewhere safe." He gestured vaguely at the deserted street. "You're wandering alone through the old quarter at 1 in the morning, bleeding and in shock. That's how mortals end up in the river. I can take care of myself. Can you?" He tilted his head. "Then why aren't you home?" Elena's jaw tightened. "That's none of your business. You gave him a key. It wasn't a question." The stranger's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his voice. "He knows where you live. You're afraid he'll be waiting." "How did you? I'm very old," he said simply. "I've seen this pattern before. Many times." He stood on the railing, perfectly balanced, and stepped off. He fell to stories and landed in a crouch on the cobblestones, barely making a sound. When he straightened, his coat settled around him like wings folding. Elena took an involuntary step back. "Relax. I told you I'm not going to hurt you." He studied her with that same clinical intensity from the alley. "You need shelter, food, medical attention. Where can you get those things? I'll figure it out. Before or after you collapse from shock and exhaustion." He moved closer, and Elena forced herself not to run. "Your hands are trembling. Your pupils are dilated. You're experiencing a trauma response, which is entirely reasonable given the evening you've had, but it's also dangerous. You need to rest somewhere secure, and you're offering out of the goodness of your heart?" Elena heard the edge in her own voice. "What do you want?" Something flickered across his face, amusement, maybe, or respect. "Direct. I appreciate that." He considered her for a moment. "What I want is to avoid the political headache that would result from a mortal dying in my territory after I intervened in her assault. The houses have rules, complicated ones. If you die within 24 hours of our encounter, I'll have to answer uncomfortable questions. Your territory? The old quarter. Parts of it anyway. It's complicated." He waved a hand dismissively. "The point is, keeping you alive is in my best interest. So I'm going to make you an offer, and I suggest you accept it." Elena crossed her arms despite the trembling. "What kind of offer?" "I have a residence nearby. You can stay there tonight. Rest, clean yourself up, figure out your next move. In the morning, you leave and we never speak of this again. You're inviting me to your house." Elena's voice was flat with disbelief. "You, a creature with red eyes who can fall to stories and throw grown men like rag dolls, want me to come home with you?" "When you put it that way, it does sound suspicious," he admitted. "But consider your alternatives. You can wander the streets until dawn, hoping your ex-boyfriend doesn't find you. You can try to check into a hotel with no phone and, I'm guessing, limited funds. Or you can accept help from someone who has no reason to harm you and several reasons to keep you safe. You could be a serial killer. I could be. But serial killers generally don't announce themselves by performing superhuman feats in front of witnesses." He paused. "Also, if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. I'm trying not to be insulting about this, but you couldn't stop me. Neither could anyone else in this city. So the question isn't whether I'm dangerous, I am, but whether I'm dangerous to you. And I'm telling you clearly and directly that I'm not." It was the most terrifying, logical argument Elena had ever heard, and he was right. She had nowhere else to go, no one to call, no safe place to sleep. She could keep walking until exhaustion took her, or she could trust the monster who'd saved her life. "If you try anything," Elena started. "You what? Fight me off?" He didn't sound mocking, just curious. "You're welcome to try, but I'd rather we skip that part. I'm offering shelter, not seduction. You'll have your own room with a lock. I won't enter without permission. In the morning, you leave." "That's the arrangement." Elena studied his face, trying to read something beyond that supernatural stillness. His expression gave nothing away, no predatory hunger, no hidden agenda. Just a kind of weary patience, as if he'd had this conversation before and found it tedious. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly, for the first time. Something genuine crossed his features, something that looked almost like pain. "Because someone should have helped me once," he said. "And no one did." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with centuries of weight. Elena couldn't begin to understand. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, one night, then I'm gone." "Agreed." He turned and began walking, clearly expecting her to follow. After a moment, She did. They moved through the old quarter in silence, taking turns that seemed random, until Elena realized he was avoiding the main streets, keeping to the shadows. The buildings grew older, their architecture shifting from 18th century to something earlier medieval stonework. Narrow windows, walls thick enough to withstand sieges. Finally, he stopped in front of an iron gate set into a stone wall. Beyond it, Elena could see a courtyard and the looming silhouette of a mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from a Gothic novel. Home, sweet home, the stranger said, producing a key from somewhere inside his coat. The gate swung open with a soft creak. Welcome to Bloodworth House. Bloodworth, Elena repeated. You're joking. I don't joke about property ownership. Too many legal complications. He glanced back at her. Are you coming? Or would you like to stand in the street debating nomenclature? Elena stepped through the gate. The stranger smiled just a small curve of his mouth, but it transformed his face from coldly beautiful to something almost human. Smart choice, he said. Then he led her into the darkness. And Elena followed, too tired and too desperate to consider that she might never leave. Chapter 3. Threshold of Secrets. Bloodworth House was nothing like Elena expected. The courtyard was overgrown with climbing roses that had gone wild, their thorny vines covering the stone walls in a tapestry of dark green and blood-red blooms. A fountain stood silent in the center, its basin dry and cracked, filled with fallen leaves instead of water. The mansion itself loomed 3 stories high, its windows dark except for a single light burning on the ground floor. The stranger led her up worn stone steps to a massive oak door. It opened before he touched it. Motion sensors, he said, catching her startled expression. I may be old, but I'm not a Luddite. Inside, the entrance hall stretched into shadow. High ceilings disappeared into darkness above. The walls were lined with portraits, severe-faced men and women in clothing from different centuries, all with the same unsettling beauty, the same pale skin. Their painted eyes seemed to follow Elena as she passed. Family? She asked, her voice echoing. In a manner of speaking, he closed the door behind them. Multiple locks clicked into place, heavy, mechanical sounds that made Elena's pulse quicken. The previous residents of Bloodworth House. I inherited it from the last one. She died in 1847. Inherited or something else? Inherited. She was my maker. He said it matter-of-factly, shrugging off his coat and hanging it on a brass hook. Beneath it, he wore a simple black shirt that had seen better days. I try not to kill family, even when they're monumentally irritating. Elena stood frozen in the entrance hall, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of what she'd agreed to. She was inside a vampire's house. Because he was a vampire, that much was obvious now, wasn't it? The red eyes, the superhuman strength, the casual mention of being very old and having a maker. You're panicking, he observed, moving past her toward the lit doorway. That's normal. Come, you need water and somewhere to sit before you fall down. Elena's legs followed him before her brain caught up. Through the doorway was a library floor-to-ceiling bookshelves crammed with volumes that looked ancient. A massive fireplace with embers still glowing. Worn leather furniture that had probably been expensive once. It should have felt Gothic and oppressive. Instead, it felt lived in. Safe almost. Sit, the stranger commanded, gesturing to a chair near the fire. Elena sat. Her legs were trembling again, and this time it wasn't just from fear. He disappeared through another doorway and returned moments later with a glass of water, a clean cloth, and a first aid kit that looked surprisingly modern. Drink, he said, handing her the glass. Elena obeyed. The water was cold and perfect, and she hadn't realized how thirsty she was until it touched her lips. She drained half the glass before coming up for air. The stranger knelt in front of her chair, first aid kit open on the floor beside him. I need to clean that cut, may I? The question surprised her. You're asking permission? Consent matters. His tone was serious, even for something as simple as this. So may I? Elena nodded slowly. He was gentle. His fingers were cool as he tilted her head, examining the wound with a clinical precision that suggested medical training. He dampened the cloth and cleaned away the dried blood with careful strokes, never pressing too hard. It's not deep, he said after a moment. No stitches needed. You'll have a bruise, but it should heal cleanly. You've done this before, Elena said. Many times. He applied antiseptic to a cotton pad. This might sting. It did, but Elena barely felt it. She was too focused on him, this creature kneeling at her feet, tending her wounds with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen countless injuries over countless years. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. He paused, looking up at her. In the firelight, his red eyes seemed almost human, almost warm. "Considering you're in my house, that's probably overdue. I'm Caspian. Caspian Bloodworth, though I wasn't born with that name." "Elena," she offered. "Elena Raines." "Elena." He tested the name, returning his attention to her wound. "Greek origin. Means light or torch." "Ironic, given the circumstances. And Caspian means from Kasvan," Elena said. "A city in Iran." "Also ironic, since you don't look Persian." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I was turned in 1645, in London, during the Civil War." The name came later, an affectation, really. "My maker had a terrible sense of humor." He finished bandagging her temple, and sat back on his heels, studying his work. Satisfied, he began gathering the medical supplies. "Why are you being kind to me?" Elena asked. The question came out softer than she intended. "You said it was about politics and territory. But this," she gestured at the first aid kit. The water, the gentle way he'd touched her. "This is more than self-preservation." Caspian was quiet for a long moment. He set the first aid kit aside and moved to the chair opposite hers, settling into it with fluid grace. "Do you know what the worst part of immortality is?" he asked finally. "It's not the bloodlust or the inability to see sunlight. It's watching mortals suffer the same patterns over and over, century after century, and being powerless to change it. Men who hurt women. Women who endure it because they have no other choice. The cycle repeats endlessly." He stopped, jaw tightening. "I can't fix the world, but I can stop one bleeding woman from dying in an alley." "So I do." Elena's throat tightened. "Someone hurt you. Before you were turned. Someone hurt everyone before they were turned," Caspian said. "That's usually how it works. The making requires trauma, physical or emotional. Death of the old self. Rebirth into something else." He leaned back, his red eyes distant. "But yes, someone hurt me. Badly enough that when my maker offered me a choice, die as a human or live as a monster, I chose the monster. Do you regret it?" "Every day." The admission was so quiet Elena almost missed it. "And not at all. It's complicated." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Elena should have been terrified, should have been planning her escape, looking for weapons, anything. Instead, she felt strange, calm almost. As if she'd stepped outside of time, into a space where normal rules didn't apply. "The houses you mentioned," she said. "What are they?" Caspian's expression shuddered. "That's a conversation for tomorrow, when you're rested and thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearly now." "Are you? You've been assaulted, rescued by a vampire, and brought to a Gothic mansion in the middle of the night. Most humans in your position would be screaming or catatonic. The fact that you're sitting here asking coherent questions suggests shock, not clarity." He wasn't wrong. Elena could feel it now, the numbness creeping in around the edges, her mind trying to process too much at once and shutting down instead. "You need rest," Caspian said, standing. "Come, I'll show you to your room." Elena followed him up a curved staircase to the second floor. The hallway was lined with more portraits, more dark wood, more shadows that seemed to watch. Caspian stopped at a door near the middle of the hall and pushed it open. The room beyond was surprisingly normal. A 4-poster bed with clean linens, a wardrobe, a writing desk, a window with heavy curtains drawn shut. "The lock works from the inside," Caspian said, demonstrating. "There's a bathroom through that door. Towels, toiletries, everything you need. If you require anything else, my room is at the end of the hall, but I won't disturb you." "Where will you be?" Elena asked. "Downstairs. Reading, mostly. I don't sleep much." He paused in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You're safe here, Elena. I give you my word." "Whatever that's worth." "Thank you," she said. "For everything." Caspian nodded once, then pulled the door closed behind him. Elena stood alone in the strange room, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall. She should lock the door, should barricade it with furniture, should do anything except what she did, which was collapse onto the bed, fully clothed, and fall into the first dreamless sleep she'd had in months. Downstairs, Caspian returned to the library and stood before the fire, staring into the flames. He hadn't lied to her. Not exactly. But he hadn't told her the whole truth either. The houses were already watching. They'd know about tonight's incident by morning. And when they learned he'd brought a mortal into Bloodworth House, into the heart of his territory, there would be questions, dangerous questions. He should send her away at dawn, should erase her memory of this night and let her go back to her mortal life. But something stopped him. The same thing that had made him intervene in the alley, that had made him follow her through the streets, that had made him offer her shelter. She reminded him of someone, of himself perhaps before the turning, or maybe just of what it felt like to be human and afraid and desperately, painfully alone. Caspian pulled a book from the shelf, a battered copy of Keats, and settled into his chair. Tomorrow, he would deal with the consequences. Tonight, he would let her sleep. Chapter 4. Morning revelation. Elena awoke to sunlight filtering through heavy curtains and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where she was. Then memory crashed back. Marcus. The alley, red eyes in the darkness, a vampire named Caspian, who'd bandaged her wounds and given her shelter. She sat up too quickly, her head spinning, the cut on her temple throbbing in protest. The room looked different in daylight. Less Gothic, more lived in. The furniture was antique, but well maintained. Someone had left a tray on the bedside table while she slept, a carafe of water, fresh fruit, bread and cheese, and a folded piece of paper. Elena unfolded it. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. There are clothes in the wardrobe if you need them. Take what you require. The house is yours to explore, though I'd avoid the basement. There are stairs, and they're treacherous. I'll be in the library when you're ready to talk. See, she checked her watch. Nearly 10 in the morning. She'd slept for 8 hours, which should have been impossible after last night's trauma. Yet she felt more rested than she had in weeks. The bathroom was surprisingly modern, updated plumbing, a clawfoot tub, fluffy towels. Elena showered, wincing as hot water hit her bruised face. The mirror showed the damage clearly, a purple-blue bruise spreading across her left cheekbone, the bandage cut on her temple. Shadows under her eyes, proof that last night had been real. She found clothing in the wardrobe as promised, women's clothes in various sizes and styles, ranging from Victorian-era dresses to modern jeans and sweaters. All clean, all perfectly preserved. Elena chose jeans and a soft gray sweater that fit reasonably well, trying not to think about who'd worn them before. Downstairs, the house felt different in daylight, less oppressive. The portraits on the walls were still unsettling, but without shadows. They were just paintings, beautiful, pale faces frozen in time. She found the library easily, following the scent of old books and something else, something metallic and strange. Caspian sat in the same chair as last night, reading. He didn't look up when she entered. "You don't sleep at all?" Elena asked. "I did. For about 2 hours." He closed the book. She caught a glimpse of the title, something in Latin, and finally met her eyes. "How are you feeling?" "Confused. Sore. Surprisingly not dead. The bar is low, but I'm glad I cleared it." He set the book aside. "There's more food in the kitchen if you're hungry. The breakfast I left was a guess. I'm not entirely sure what humans eat anymore." Elena picked an apple from the tray and bit into it, suddenly ravenous. "You don't eat?" "Not food. Not for nearly 400 years." He said it casually, but Elena saw something flicker in his expression. "I remember the taste of things sometimes. Bread mostly. My mother made bread every morning when I was a child. I can still smell it, in my mind. But the actual experience," he shrugged. "Gone." Elena sat in the chair opposite him, the same seat from last night. "What do you eat?" "Blood." He watched her face carefully. "I assume you've worked that out by now." "Yes." Elena kept her voice steady. "Do you kill people?" "Not anymore. Not for a very long time." Caspian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I feed from willing donors, mortals who understand what I am and consent to the exchange. It's safer for everyone. Less messy, legally. And it turns out that when you're not murdering people, they're more inclined to let you exist peacefully. How very civilized. The houses prefer it that way." Speaking of which, he stood abruptly, moving to the window. "We need to discuss last night. Specifically, what happens next." Elena's stomach tightened. "You're going to erase my memory." "I could. It would be easier." He pulled back the heavy curtain slightly, and Elena saw him flinch away from the shaft of direct sunlight. Not bursting into flames, just uncomfortable. "But I won't. Not unless you ask me to. You deserve the choice." "What are the houses?" Elena asked. "You mentioned them twice now." Caspian let the curtain fall and turned to face her. "The houses are vampire families, political entities that control territories in cities around the world. Think of them as organized crime families, but older and significantly more dangerous. There are 5 major houses in Ashenmoor: Thorn, Ravencroft, Nightshade, Sable, and Bloodworth. Your house. I'm the last of my line. My maker died without creating others, and I've never turned anyone. So Bloodworth is technically a house, but in practice, it's just me. He crossed the room to a cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a rolled map. The old quarter is my territory. Has been for over a century. The other houses respect that boundary because I respect theirs. It's a delicate balance. He spread the map on a low table between them. Ashenmoor was divided into sections marked with different colors: red for Thorn, black for Sable, purple for Nightshade, silver for Ravencroft, and deep blue for Bloodworth. Last night, you were attacked in my territory, Caspian said. I intervened. That's my right. Humans under my protection are my responsibility. But then I brought you here, into my home. That changes things. How? The houses have laws about mortal contact. Most are simple. Don't kill unnecessarily. Don't expose our nature to the public. Don't create political complications. But there are others: older rules about harboring mortals, about blood bonds, about what happens when a vampire takes a human under their protection. He met her eyes. By bringing you here, I've essentially claimed you. Elena's blood ran cold. Claimed me? Not in the way you're thinking. I don't own you. You're free to leave whenever you want. But in the eyes of the other houses, you're under my guardianship now. Which means if anything happens to you, if Marcus finds you, if you're hurt, if you die, it reflects on me, on Bloodworth. So I'm a political liability. Yes, he said it simply, without apology. And the houses will want to know why I took that risk. Elena stood, apple forgotten, anger rising through her confusion. So what exactly am I supposed to do? Walk out of here and hope Marcus doesn't find me? Go back to my apartment? Pretend none of this happened? Those are options, Caspian said quietly. Not good ones, but options. Or what? He hesitated, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. Or you stay. Not permanently, just until we solve your Marcus problem and you're back on your feet. You'd be safer here than anywhere else in the city. No mortal can enter without invitation, and any vampire who tried would answer to me. In exchange for what? Nothing. I'm not negotiating. I'm offering. Caspian moved closer, and Elena forced herself not to step back. You need time. Time to heal, to plan, to figure out your next move without looking over your shoulder every second. I can give you that time. But you need to understand what you'd be walking into. The other houses will notice. There will be questions, possibly visits. And if they decide you're a threat, what would they do? Demand I turn you or kill you? Those are the usual options for mortals who know too much. He saw her expression, and added quickly, I wouldn't do either. I'd protect you. But it would complicate things significantly. Elena's mind raced. Stay in a vampire's mansion, under his protection, and risk becoming a target of immortal politics? Or leave and face Marcus alone, with no resources and nowhere to go? Why are you doing this? She asked. Really? Not the political answer, the truth. Caspian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because 380 years ago, I was where you are now. Beaten, terrified, with nowhere to go and no one to help me. And when someone finally offered me salvation, it came with a price I'm still paying. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to have to sell your humanity to survive. The vulnerability in his words struck something deep in Elena's chest. If I stay, she said slowly, I need rules, boundaries. Name them. You don't enter my room without permission. You don't erase my memory unless I explicitly ask. And you tell me the truth about the houses, about the dangers, about everything. No protecting me by keeping me ignorant. Agreed. Caspian extended his hand. Do we have an arrangement? Elena looked at his pale hand, his red eyes. The ancient creature offering her shelter in a world that had suddenly become far stranger and more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. She took his hand. His skin was cool, but not cold. His grip firm but gentle. We have an arrangement, she said. Caspian's expression softened into something that might have been relief. Good. Then let's start with breakfast, actual breakfast. Not just an apple, and I'll explain exactly what you've gotten yourself into. He led her toward the kitchen, and Elena followed, aware that she'd just crossed a threshold she could never uncross. Behind them, through the library window, a shadow moved across the courtyard wall, Someone was watching Bloodworth House, and they'd seen everything. Chapter 5. The Watcher and the Watch of the kitchen was not what Elena expected. Modern appliances sat alongside centuries-old stonework. A gleaming espresso machine rested on a counter next to what looked like a medieval bread oven. The refrigerator hummed quietly, stocked with fresh food that Caspian clearly didn't eat himself. "I have a housekeeper," he explained, catching her curious look. "Mrs. Chen. She comes twice a week, stocks the kitchen, manages the property. She's mortal, but she knows what I am. Her family has worked for Bloodworth House for 3 generations, and she's okay with that? Her grandmother saved my life in 1952. Well, saved my existence. There was an incident with vampire hunters and a cathedral basement. I've been paying the debt ever since." He gestured to the cabinets. "She'll be here tomorrow. Fair warning, she'll have questions about you." Elena found eggs, butter, bread. Cooking felt surreal in this Gothic mansion, but her hands remembered the motions. Scrambled eggs, toast. Normal things. Human things. Caspian sat at the small kitchen table, watching her with unsettling focus. "You're staring," Elena said. "Sorry. I haven't watched someone cook in decades. It's nostalgic." He looked away, giving her privacy. "Tell me about Marcus. How did you meet?" Elena's hands tightened on the spatula. "Support group. After my mother died. He seemed kind, understanding. He listened when I talked about her, about the grief. I thought," her voice cracked. "I thought he cared. And when did it change?" "Slowly. So slowly I didn't notice until it was too late. First it was small things, checking my phone, asking where I'd been. Then it was discouraging me from seeing friends, suggesting I quit my job because the commute was stressing me out, making me feel like I couldn't survive without him." She plated the eggs mechanically. "Last night was the first time he hit me. But it wasn't the first time he hurt me." Caspian's expression darkened. "I should have killed him." "No." Elena sat across from him, picking at her food. "I don't want that on my conscience. I don't want to be the reason someone dies. Even someone who hurt you?" "Even then." She met his red eyes. "I'm not like you. I can't carry that weight." "You think I can?" Caspian's voice was soft, dangerous. "Every person I've killed, and there have been many I remember. Their faces, their last words, the exact moment their life ended. Immortality doesn't grant you peace from your choices. It gives you eternity to regret them." Elena set down her fork. "How many people I've killed?" 247. Give or take." He said it without inflection. "Most in the 1st century after my turning, when I was young and feral and didn't understand what I'd become. Some were self-defense. Some were mercy. And some," he stopped. "Some I have no excuse for, except hunger and rage." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know what I am. Not the romantic Gothic figure from novels, the real thing. A predator who's learned to pass as civilized, but who still dreams of blood every time your heart beats." His gaze fixed on her throat. "I can hear it, you know. Your pulse. It's intoxicating. And every instinct I have tells me to feed." Elena should have been terrified. Should have run. Instead, she asked, "But you don't?" "No, because centuries of existence have taught me that some hungers destroy you faster than starvation." He stood abruptly. "Eat. I need to check something." He left before Elena could respond. She finished her eggs in silence, her appetite gone, then cleaned her dishes and wandered back toward the library. The house felt different now, less sanctuary, more cage. Beautiful, but confining. She found Caspian standing at the front window, curtains drawn back just enough for him to see the courtyard while staying in shadow. His posture was tense. "What is it?" Elena asked. "We're being watched." He didn't turn. "Someone's been outside for the past 20 minutes. They're being careful, staying at the edge of my property line, but they're definitely observing the house." Elena's stomach dropped. "Marcus?" "No, vampire. I can smell them from here, old blood, expensive cologne, and," he inhaled carefully, "House Thorn." "Of course it would be Thorn. Is that bad?" "Depends on who they sent." Caspian moved away from the window, deeper into shadow. "Thorn controls most of the northern districts. They're powerful, traditional, and extremely interested in maintaining the status quo. If they're watching Bloodworth House, it means they know about last night. How could they know already? Vampires gossip worse than mortals. Someone saw us. Probably multiple someones." He paced, a predatory restlessness in his movements. "The question is what they want: information, intimidation. Or something worse. A knock echoed through the house, sharp, deliberate. 3 measured strikes against the heavy front door. Caspian went perfectly still. Stay here, like hell. Elena followed him to the entrance hall, ignoring his warning. Look, if this goes badly, Caspian said quietly, run upstairs. Lock yourself in your room. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Who is it? Only one way to find out. He opened the door. A woman stood on the threshold, elegant in tailored black, her dark hair swept up in a flawless chignon. Her skin had the same impossible pallor as Caspian's, her eyes the deep crimson of old wine. She looked 30, but something in her bearing suggested centuries. Caspian Bloodworth. Her voice was cultured, English, with an accent that predated modern Britain. How delightful to see you. It's been what? 5 years since we spoke. Lady Thorne. Caspian's tone was carefully neutral. This is unexpected, is it? She smiled, showing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. You bring a mortal into your home, into your bed, according to some reports, and you think the houses wouldn't notice? She's not in my bed. She's a guest under my protection. How chivalrous. Lady Thorne's gaze shifted to Elena, and Elena felt pinned like a butterfly under glass. And what's your name, little mortal? Elena. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Elena Raines. Elena. Lady Thorne tested the name. Tell me, Elena, do you understand what you've done? What it means to accept shelter from one of us? I'm beginning to. Are you? Lady Thorne stepped forward. Caspian moved to block her, but she simply laughed. Relax, Bloodworth. I'm not here to harm your pet. I'm here to deliver a message from the council. What message? Caspian asked. The houses are concerned. A mortal in Bloodworth House raises questions. Questions about your intentions, your loyalties, whether you're planning to turn her and expand your house. Lady Thorne's expression hardened. The balance we've maintained for decades is delicate. One new vampire could shift power dynamics significantly. The council needs assurance that you're not planning anything disruptive. I'm not turning her, Caspian said flatly. She's here temporarily, under my protection, until she's safe to return to her life. That's all, is it? Lady Thorne looked between them. Because from where I stand, this looks like the beginning of something. And beginnings are dangerous, Caspian. They lead to complications, attachments, mistakes that last centuries. I'm aware. Are you? Because I remember what happened with Isabel. I remember how that ended. Lady Thorne's voice softened with something that might have been genuine concern. I don't want to see you go through that again. Caspian's jaw tightened. Isabel was different, was she? A mortal woman, alone, desperate, who you decided to save. It sounds remarkably similar to me. Who's Isabel? Elena asked. Both vampires turned to look at her, and Elena realized she'd made a mistake. Whatever Isabel represented, it was clearly painful territory. No one, Caspian said. She's no one anymore. She's the reason Bloodworth House stands empty except for you, Lady Thorne said. The reason Caspian hasn't created another vampire in over a century. The reason enough. Caspian's voice was cold authority. Deliver your message, Thorne, and leave. Lady Thorne's expression hardened. Very well. The council demands an accounting. Tomorrow night, at the Nightshade Estate, you'll present yourself and your guest. You'll explain your actions, and you'll accept whatever judgment the council deems appropriate. And if I refuse, then you'll be declaring yourself rogue. And we both know what happens to rogues. She smiled without warmth. Choose wisely, Bloodworth. Don't let sentiment destroy everything you've built. She turned and walked down the steps, disappearing into the morning shadows with inhuman grace. Caspian closed the door slowly, multiple locks sliding home. Tomorrow night, Elena said. What happens tomorrow night? Caspian leaned against the door, looking more tired than any immortal should. Tomorrow night, you meet the monsters who actually run this city, and they decide whether you live or die. Chapter 6. Blood Oaths and Broken Promises. Rest of the day passed intense preparation. Caspian disappeared into his study for hours, emerging only to give Elena terse updates about council protocols and house politics. She learned that the 5 houses ruled Ashenmoor through a fragile alliance, each controlling their territory, each maintaining their own laws, but all bound by ancient agreements meant to prevent open war. The last vampire war was in 1892, Caspian explained, spreading documents across the library table. 43 vampires died, hundreds of mortals. The city nearly burned. The houses agreed afterward never again. Every dispute goes through the council now, and the council will decide what happens to me. Elena studied the documents, contracts written in elaborate script, some in languages she didn't recognize. They'll decide if you're a threat to the balance. If you know too much. If my protection of you violates any treaties. He pointed to a particularly old document. The ink faded to brown. This one's the problem. The Covenant of Blood, written in 1647. It states that any vampire who brings a mortal into their household must either turn them within a year, bind them through blood oath, or present them to the council for judgment. What's a blood oath? Caspian's expression darkened. A binding. The mortal drinks vampire blood, not enough to turn, just enough to create a connection. It ties their life to the vampires, makes them loyal, compliant, essentially creates a servant bound by supernatural compulsion. That's slavery, yes, which is why I won't do it. He gathered the documents. But the council will expect one of the three options: turn you, bind you, or let them decide your fate. And what will they decide? Memory erasure if we're lucky. Death, if we're not. Possibly both. Erase your memory, then kill you to ensure you never remember. He said it matter-of-factly, but Elena saw tension in his shoulders. Some of the older vampires prefer permanent solutions to potential problems. Elena sat down heavily. So tomorrow night, I walk into a room full of vampires who want to either enslave me or kill me, and hope they're feeling merciful. That's the situation. Yes. This is insane. I should run. Leave the city. Change my name. They'd find you. Caspian's voice was gentle but firm. House Thorn has resources across 3 continents. If they want you found, you'd have maybe a week before someone knocked on your door. And then you'd face the council without my protection. Elena pressed her hands to her face, trying to steady her breathing. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem had been Marcus. Now she was caught in vampire politics. That could get her killed. There is one other option, Caspian said quietly. What? I could turn you. The words hung in the air between them. Elena lowered her hands slowly. You said you wouldn't. I won't. Not without your consent. But it is an option. He moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames. If you were vampire, the council couldn't touch you. You'd be House Bloodworth, small, yes, but legitimate. Protected by the same treaties as any other house member. And I'd have to drink blood. Live forever. Watch everyone I know die. Elena's voice was hollow. Become what you are. Yes. He didn't flinch from it. It's not a gift, Elena. It's a curse dressed up as immortality. You'd be stronger, faster, nearly impossible to kill. But you'd also be hungry always, constantly, endlessly hungry. And food would taste like ash. Sunlight would hurt. You'd watch the world change around you while you stayed frozen. At whatever age I turned, he turned to face her. I wouldn't wish this existence on anyone, especially not you. Then why offer? Because it might be the only way to keep you alive. The raw honesty in his voice made Elena's chest tight. And I find that I very much want you to stay alive. Elena stood, moving closer to him. In the firelight, his pale skin seemed to glow. Why? You barely know me. I know you're brave. I know you'd rather face Marcus than let me kill him for you. I know you ask questions instead of running. And you cleaned your own breakfast dishes even though you're terrified. And he stopped. You remind me of who I used to be. Before the turning. Before I became this. Who were you? Caspian was quiet for a long moment. A blacksmith's son. Nothing special. I worked with my father, made horseshoes and nails and farm tools. I was going to marry a girl named Margaret. We'd have had children, grown old, died quietly. His voice was distant, remembering. Then the war came. Royalists came through our village looking for conscripts. I refused. They beat me, left me for dead in a ditch. And that's where she found me, your maker, Lady Arabella Bloodworth. She was old even then, turned during the Black Death, or so she claimed. She saw something in me, defiance, maybe, or just usefulness, and she offered me a choice. Die in that ditch, or live forever and serve her house. He laughed bitterly. I chose wrong. She hurt you. She owned me. For 2 centuries, I was her bodyguard, servant, assassin, whatever she needed. I killed for her, fed for her, did things I still have nightmares about. And I couldn't refuse, because she'd bound me with blood oaths so complex I couldn't think of disobedience without pain. His hands curled into fists. When she finally died old age, of all things, even vampires can age if they live long enough. I swore I'd never do that to another person. I'd never turn anyone, never bind anyone, never create what I'd been forced to become. Elena reached out slowly, touching his arm. His skin was cool beneath her fingers. Then don't, she said. Don't turn me. Don't let them force you to break that promise. Then you'll face the council unprotected. So protect me another way. You said you'd fight for me. So fight. She held his gaze. I'm not asking you to break your vows. I'm asking you to keep them. Don't let them make you into what she was. Something shifted in Caspian's expression, surprise, perhaps, or gratitude. He covered her hand with his own, the gesture, careful, as if he'd forgotten how to touch someone gently. You're either very brave or very foolish, he said, probably both. A small smile curved his lips. Then we'll face the council together. And if they try to harm you, his expression hardened. I've lived nearly for centuries. I've made enemies and allies, collected debts and favors. I know things about every house that they'd prefer stayed buried. If they want to fight, I'll give them one. That sounds like it could start a war. It could. He released her hand, stepping back. Which is why we need leverage. Something to make them think twice about threatening you. What kind of leverage? Caspian moved to a bookshelf, pulling out a slim leather journal. Every vampire has secrets. Isabel taught me that before. He stopped. Before everything went wrong. She was mortal like you. And she was brilliant at gathering information, finding weakness, understanding power dynamics. What happened to her? Caspian's jaw tightened. She learned too much. Made herself too useful. The other houses decided she was dangerous. They demanded I turn her or surrender her for judgment. He opened the journal, but Elena saw his hands tremble. I refused both. Told them she was under my protection, that I'd go to war before I let them touch her. And they killed her anyway. Sent assassins while I was away on house business. Made it look like a mortal attack, thieves breaking in, violence escalating. By the time I returned, she'd been dead for 3 days. His voice was hollow. I found her in the library, right where you're standing now. Elena's breath caught. Caspian, I burned House Sable to the ground that night. Killed 7 vampires before the council stopped me. They nearly executed me for it, but Lady Thorne intervened. Said I'd been provoked beyond reason, that Sable had violated the neutrality of my territory. He closed the journal. They let me live, but they took everything else. My allies, my status, my standing in vampire society. Bloodworth House became a joke, a once proud line reduced to a single traumatized vampire living alone in a Gothic ruin. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I earned my isolation. He set the journal aside. But I learned something from Isabel's death. The houses respect power, fear, exposure, and value stability above all else. If we want to survive tomorrow night, we need to make me powerful again. And we need to make you too valuable to kill. How? Caspian's smile was sharp and cold. We remind them why they feared Bloodworth once. And we show them that you're not just some helpless mortal, you're someone who can hurt them if they force our hand. He pulled out his phone, surprisingly modern for someone so old, and began typing. I'm calling in favors. Old debts, forgotten alliances, secrets I've kept buried for decades. By tomorrow night, every house will know that touching you means facing consequences they can't afford. Elena watched him work. This ancient creature who'd somehow become her only ally in a world that wanted her dead or enslaved. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else, a strange, fierce determination. Teach me, she said. Caspian looked up. What? Teach me about them. About vampire politics, house dynamics, their weaknesses. If I'm walking into that council meeting, I want to understand what I'm facing. I want to be able to defend myself. Caspian studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile, warm and almost human. All right, he said. Let's make you dangerous. Chapter 7. Lessons in Blood and Power. They worked through the afternoon and into evening. The library becoming a war room. Caspian spread maps across the table, not just of Ashenmoor, but of vampire territories throughout Europe and North America. He produced files, photographs, documents that looked like they belonged in a museum. Each house had weaknesses, he explained. Secrets they'd kill to protect. House Thorne, he began, tapping a photograph of Lady Thorne. Old money, older blood. They've controlled the northern districts since 1703. Lady Morgana Thorne is their matriarch, turned during the reign of Queen Anne. Ruthlessly political, obsessed with maintaining traditional power structures, he pulled out another photo. She has 3 progeny, Marcus Thorne, Vivian Thorne, and Sebastian Thorne, all turned within the last century, all carefully chosen for their strategic value. What's her weakness? Elena asked, taking notes. Pride. And her youngest, Sebastian? He's been making noise about modernizing House Thorne, bringing them into the 21st century. She hates it, but she can't afford to lose him. He controls their tech infrastructure, their digital footprint. If Sebastian turned against her, Thorne would be exposed within days. Elena wrote it down. Next, House Ravencroft. Caspian's expression darkened. Artists, every one of them. They turned some of the greatest painters, musicians, and writers of the last 3 centuries, then locked them away in their estate, forcing them to create masterpieces that Ravencroft sells for millions. It's slavery disguised as patronage. That's horrible. It's profitable. And the mortal art world has no idea. He showed her photographs of stunning paintings, sculptures, compositions. But here's the thing: 2 years ago, one of their artists escaped. A violinist named Chen Wei. She's been living in Hong Kong under an assumed name, working as a music teacher. If her existence became public knowledge, every artist Ravencroft has ever turned would have proof that escape is possible. You've been protecting her. Elena realized. Her granddaughter is my housekeeper. Mrs. Chen. I owe their family more than I can repay. Caspian moved to the next file. House Nightshade specializes in information. They run surveillance networks, data collection operations, blackmail schemes. If you have a secret, they probably know it. Their leader is Lord Victor Nightshade, paranoid, brilliant, and absolutely terrified of exposure. What's he hiding? Everything. But most importantly, he's been embezzling from the other houses for decades. Small amounts, carefully hidden. But it adds up. I have documentation. If it came out, the other houses would tear Nightshade apart. Elena felt dizzy with the complexity of it all. And House Sable. Caspian's expression went cold. The house that killed Isabel. They deal in blood trade, buying and selling from desperate mortals, running illegal feeding operations, treating humans like livestock. Their current leader is Lady Cordelia Sable. She rebuilt the house after I burned it, made it even more profitable than before. Do you have leverage against her? I have evidence of every illegal operation they run. Names, dates, locations. Enough to bring mortal law enforcement down on them if released publicly. He met Elena's eyes. I've been saving it, waiting for the right moment. Tomorrow night might be that moment. It might. Caspian gathered the files. But leverage only works if you're willing to use it. And using it could trigger exactly the kind of war the council exists to prevent. Elena stood, pacing the library. Her head ached from information overload. So we walk in with nuclear weapons we can't actually detonate, and hope they believe we're crazy enough to push the button. Essentially, yes. That's a terrible plan. It's the only plan we have. Caspian checked his watch. You need to eat, real food, and rest. Tomorrow night will be intense. But Elena wasn't hungry. She was wired, anxious, her mind racing through scenarios. What about you? What's your weakness? Caspian went very still. What do you mean? You've told me everyone else's secrets. What's yours? What could they use against you? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then quietly, you. Elena's breath caught. Me? You're my weakness now. They'll see that. They'll use it. He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening courtyard. I've been alone for over a century by choice. No allies, no attachments, nothing. They could threaten to control me. It made me unpredictable, dangerous. But now, he turned to face her. Now I've brought you into my home, protected you, defied Lady Thorne for you. Every vampire in the city will know that you matter to me. And that makes you the perfect weapon against me. Then we don't show them that. We present this as purely political. You're protecting your territory, asserting your rights. Nothing personal. They won't believe it. Make them believe it. Elena crossed to him, forcing confidence she didn't feel. You said I need to be dangerous. Well, dangerous people don't show fear. They don't show weakness. Tomorrow night, I'm not some helpless mortal you're protecting out of sentiment. I'm a strategic asset. Someone who knows their secrets, who could destroy them if necessary. Make them more afraid of me than they are interested in killing me. Caspian studied her face. You've never been to war, have you? No, you're thinking like a soldier. Anyway, that's good. He almost smiled. Isabel thought like that too. Strategic, always 3 moves ahead. It's part of why they killed her. She was too smart to useful, too dangerous to leave alive, and too valuable to waste. Then I'll have to be smarter. Elena held his gaze. Teach me how to fight, Elena, not physically. I know I can't win against vampires in combat, but teach me how to fight their way. With words, with politics, with leverage. Show me how to survive in their world. Caspian considered this. Then he moved to a cabinet, pulled out a bottle of dark liquid, and poured a small glass. First lesson: vampire etiquette. There are rules, old ones, enforced by tradition rather than law, but breaking them can be fatal. He handed her the glass. It smelled like wine, but darker, richer. What is this? Wine, just wine. But tomorrow night, you'll be offered blood wine mixed with vampire blood. It's a traditional greeting, a sign of trust and peace. If you refuse it, you're declaring yourself an enemy. If you accept it, you're acknowledging their authority. Elena stared at the glass. Do I have to drink actual blood? Just a drop, mixed in wine. Not enough to turn you or bind you, but enough to show respect. He leaned against the cabinet. Vampires value ritual. The old ones especially, they remember when ceremonies and blood oaths were how society functioned. Play by their rules, show you understand their traditions, and they'll see you as someone who can navigate their world. And if I can't, then you're just prey. Elena lifted the glass, studying the dark liquid. Then she drank. It was bitter, complex, ancient tasting. She forced herself not to grimace. Caspian's expression softened. Good. Second lesson: never show fear, but always show respect. Vampires can smell fear literally. Elevated heart rate, stress hormones, the chemical changes in your sweat. They'll know you're afraid. But if you act despite that fear, if you show courage while acknowledging their power, they'll respect you for it. What else? They worked through the evening. Caspian taught her the formal greetings, the proper modes of address, how to read vampire body language. He explained the council's structure: 5 houses, each sending their leader, with disputes settled by majority vote. He showed her where to stand, how to present herself, which vampires to never make eye contact with, and which ones to challenge directly. Lady Thorne will try to intimidate you, he said. She'll ask personal questions, probe for weakness. Don't lie, she'll know. But don't volunteer information either. Answer precisely what she asks, nothing more. And Lord Nightshade will already know everything about you. Your history, your family, your relationship with Marcus. Don't be surprised when he uses it. Just don't react. Caspian moved closer. The key is making them uncertain. Uncertain about what you know, what you're capable of, whether you're valuable enough to keep alive. Uncertainty breeds caution. Elena nodded, filing away each lesson. But exhaustion was creeping in, her body reminding her that she'd been beaten less than 24 hours ago. Caspian noticed. Enough. You need rest. I'm fine, you're swaying on your feet. The council meeting is tomorrow at midnight. You have 18 hours to prepare, and you'll need every one of them. He guided her toward the stairs. Sleep. I'll keep watch. You don't sleep. No, but I'll stand guard anyway. No one will touch you here. I promise. Elena stopped at the base of the stairs, looking back at him. In the dim light, he looked both ancient and oddly young, a creature out of time, caught between what he'd been and what he'd become. Why are you doing this? She asked. Really? You could hand me over to the council. Wash your hands of this whole mess. Why risk everything for me? Caspian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Because I couldn't save Isabel. Because I've spent a century living with that failure. Because he stopped, struggling with words. Because you walked into my territory bleeding and afraid, and something in me remembered what it felt like to be human. To need help. To hope someone might care whether you lived or died. He looked away. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done monstrous things. But maybe, just maybe, I can still do one decent thing. I can keep you alive. I can make sure your story ends better than hers did. Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, to tell him he wasn't the monster he believed himself to be. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she climbed the stairs to her borrowed room, locked the door, and fell into bed fully clothed. Tomorrow night, she would face immortal predators who could kill her with a thought. Tonight, she would sleep under the protection of one who'd sworn not to. Chapter 8. The Nightshade Estate car arrived at 11. Elena stood in the entrance hall of Bloodworth House, dressed in clothes Caspian had procured from somewhere, a simple black dress, elegant but not ornate, with a high neck that covered her bruises. Her hands were steady, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Caspian descended the stairs, and Elena's breath caught. He'd transformed. Gone were the worn clothes and casual demeanor. Now he wore a perfectly tailored black suit that looked centuries old and brand new simultaneously, his dark hair pulled back, his pale skin luminous in the lamplight. He looked like what he was: ancient, powerful, dangerous. You look terrified, he observed. I am terrified. Good. Use it. He handed her a small velvet box. Open it. Inside was a silver pendant, a small shield engraved with an intricate pattern. What is this? The seal of House Bloodworth. It marks you as under my direct protection. Anyone who harms you while you wear it declares war on my house. He fastened it around her neck, his cool fingers brushing her skin. Don't take it off. No matter what they say. A horn sounded outside. Caspian offered his arm. Ready? He asked. No, perfect. Neither am I, he smiled grimly. Let's go remind them why they used to fear me. The car was a black Rolls-Royce, driven by a vampire Elena didn't recognize. They rode in silence through Ashenmoor's streets, leaving the old quarter behind. The city transformed around them from Gothic architecture to modern glass towers, then back again to an older district Elena had never seen. The Nightshade Estate sat on a hill overlooking the city, surrounded by iron gates and ancient oaks. The mansion was Victorian Gothic, all sharp angles and dark windows, lit from within by what looked like candlelight, but was probably something more permanent. The gates opened as they approached. Remember, Caspian said quietly, show respect, but not submission. Answer questions directly, and if anyone tries to touch you, step behind me immediately. Elena nodded, her mouth dry. They were met at the entrance by a tall vampire in servant's livery. He bowed slightly to Caspian. Lord Bloodworth, the council awaits you in the Great Hall. Your guest is expected. Her name is Elena Raines, Caspian said coolly. Use it. The servant's expression didn't change. Of course, Miss Raines, if you'll follow me. The interior of Nightshade Estate was oppressively grand. Vaulted ceilings, oil paintings and gilt frames, furniture that belonged in museums. But it was the silence that unnerved Elena most. No ticking clocks, no ambient noise, just the soft sound of their footsteps on marble floors. The great hall was circular, with 5 throne-like chairs arranged in a semicircle. 4 were already occupied. Lady Thorne sat to the left, regal in deep red, her dark hair crowned with what looked like actual rubies. Beside her sat a man who could only be Lord Nightshade, thin, pale, with silver hair and eyes like mercury. To the right sat a beautiful woman in flowing purple silk, House Ravencroft. Elena guessed, and next to her, a severe-looking woman in black who radiated cold authority. Lady Cordelia Sable, Caspian murmured. Don't look at her directly. The 5th chair positioned at the center was empty. Lord Bloodworth, Lady Thorne said, her voice echoing in the vast space. How punctual. And you've brought your mortal. Elena Raines, Caspian corrected, moving to stand in the center of the room. Elena stayed slightly behind him, as instructed. As requested, indeed. Lord Nightshade leaned forward, his mercury eyes fixed on Elena. Elena Marie Raines, age 26, formerly employed as a graphic designer, currently unemployed following your mother's death from cancer 6 months ago. You've been living on her life insurance, approximately 40,000 remaining. You met Marcus Chen at a grief support group, began a relationship approximately 4 months ago, which ended violently 2 nights ago when Lord Bloodworth intervened. Elena's stomach dropped. He knew everything. Quite the damsel in distress, Lady Sable said, her voice like ice. How convenient. There's nothing convenient about domestic violence, Caspian said sharply. I intervened because a mortal was being attacked in my territory. That's within my rights as House Lord. Your rights don't extend to harboring mortals overnight, Lady Thorne countered. Or have you forgotten the covenant of blood? I haven't forgotten anything. Miss Raines required medical attention and shelter. I provided both. Nothing in the covenant prohibits basic hospitality. Hospitality? The woman in purple, Lady Ravencroft, spoke for the first time, her voice melodious. Is that what we're calling it? Because it looks remarkably like attachment. And attachment leads to complications. Isn't that right, Bloodworth? Didn't we learn this lesson with Isabel? Caspian went rigid. Elena felt the rage rolling off him like heat. Careful, Vivian, he said softly. You're standing on dangerous ground. Am I? Or am I simply reminding the Council of history? Lady Ravencroft smiled. You protected Immortal before, swore she was different, special, no threat to anyone. And then she died because you couldn't let her go. How many vampires died? In your rampage afterward? How much chaos did your grief cause? 7 vampires died, Caspian said, his voice deadly quiet. All of House Sable, all guilty of murdering an innocent woman under my protection. I'd do it again. Lady Sable stood, fury in her eyes. You destroyed my house, I destroyed murderers, Caspian interrupted. And the Council let me live because they knew Sable violated every treaty we have. Don't pretend you were the victim. Enough. Lord Nightshade's voice cut through the tension. We're not here to relitigate the past. We're here to determine what happens to Miss Raines. He turned his mercury gaze on Elena, and she forced herself not to look away. Tell me, Miss Raines, do you understand what you've become involved in? Elena's throat was dry, but she found her voice. I understand that I witnessed Lord Bloodworth's intervention in my assault. I understand that he offered me shelter when I had nowhere else to go. And I understand that the Council believes I'm a threat to their secrecy. Articulate, Lady Thorne observed. She's been well coached. She's been honest, Caspian said. Which is more than I can say for some at this table. Meaning? Lady Sable demanded. Meaning? We all have secrets, Cordelia. Some of us are just better at hiding them. Caspian's tone was casual, but Elena heard the threat beneath it. Should we discuss House Sable's blood trafficking operation? Or perhaps House Nightshade's? Creative accounting? I have documents if anyone's interested. The room went dead silent. Lord Nightshade's expression never changed, but his hands tightened on the arms of his chair. Are you threatening this council? I'm reminding the council that balance goes both ways. You want to judge Miss Raines for knowing too much? Fine. But remember that I know too much as well, about all of you. And if anything happens to her, if she has an accident, if her memory is erased against her will, if she mysteriously disappears, every secret I've kept for the past century becomes public knowledge. You'd start a war over one mortal? Lady Thorne's voice was incredulous. I'd start a war over principle, Caspian corrected. Miss Raines is under my protection. She's committed no crime against the houses. She's asked for nothing except to be left alone. And you want to kill her or enslave her because she's inconvenient. He moved forward, positioning himself directly between Elena and the council. I won't allow it. Not again. Then what do you propose? Lord Nightshade asked. Recognition. Miss Raines stays under my protection. As a registered affiliate of House Bloodworth, she's bound by the same confidentiality agreements that bind all mortal employees of the houses. She reports any violations she witnesses, and in exchange, she's left alone to live her life. She knows our nature, Lady Ravencroft protested. She's seen Lord Bloodworth's abilities. That's already too much. Then you shouldn't have let your territories become so exposed, Elena heard herself say. Every vampire in the room turned to stare at her. Caspian shot her a warning glance, but Elena continued, channeling every lesson he'd taught her. I didn't ask to be attacked. I didn't ask to be rescued by a vampire. But now that I know the truth, you have two choices. Kill me and confirm Lord Bloodworth's leverage because he will release everything he knows if I die. Or let me live and gain an ally who understands the value of discretion. Bold, Lady Thorne murmured. Foolish but bold. Not foolish, Lord Nightshade said, studying Elena with new interest. Strategic. She's offering us a third option, cooperation instead of conflict. And she's right. Bloodworth's leverage makes her death inconvenient. You'd let one mortal dictate terms to this council? Lady Sable demanded. I'd prevent a war none of us can afford, Lord Nightshade replied. The mortal world is changing. Technology makes our secrecy harder to maintain every year. We need adaptability, not rigid adherence to outdated covenants. Sebastian Thorne says the same thing, Lady Thorne said icily. Should we let the young and foolish reshape centuries of tradition? Perhaps, Lady Ravencroft said quietly. Or perhaps tradition has failed us. How many mortals have died to preserve our secret? How many complications could we have avoided with better systems? She looked at Elena. What would you do, Miss Raines? If we let you live, how would you ensure our secrecy? Elena's mind raced. This was a test, maybe her only chance. Documentation, she said. A formal agreement between House Bloodworth and the mortal affiliate. Terms, obligations, consequences for violation. Make it official instead of treating me like an invisible problem. And in exchange, I provide something valuable, a mortal perspective on how your houses appear to human eyes, where your security fails, where you're exposed." The council exchanged glances. Finally, Lord Nightshade spoke. "We'll put it to a vote." Chapter 9. The Price of Survival. All in favor of Miss Raines's proposal, Lord Nightshade said, his mercury eyes scanning the council. "Raise your hand." Elena's heart stopped. Everything hung on this moment: her life, her freedom, her future. Lord Nightshade raised his hand first. Then, after a long pause, Lady Ravencroft lifted hers, her expression thoughtful. 2 votes. Lady Thorne sat motionless, her crimson eyes fixed on Elena. Lady Sable's face was a mask of cold fury. The silence stretched impossibly long. Then Lady Thorne's hand rose, slow and deliberate. "I vote in favor," she said. "Not because I trust this mortal, but because I trust Lord Bloodworth's capacity for mutually assured destruction. Sebastian would approve of the precedent. Perhaps it's time to test new methods." 3 votes. 1 more needed. Every eye turned to Lady Sable. She stood slowly, fury radiating from her like heat. "You're asking me to legitimize the protection of a mortal? To reward Bloodworth for defying the covenant? After what he did to my house? I'm asking you to prevent another massacre," Lord Nightshade said quietly. "Because if Miss Raines dies tonight, Bloodworth will burn everything. And this time, the council won't stop him. This time, we'll have no moral authority to do so." Lady Sable's hands clenched. For a terrible moment, Elena thought she would vote no, would choose vengeance over survival, would force the confrontation everyone feared. Then her hand rose. "I vote in favor," she said, her voice like broken glass. "But know this, Bloodworth, if your mortal ever betrays our trust, I will personally ensure her death is slow and painful, and no leverage will save her." Caspian's expression didn't change. "If she betrays your trust, I'll hand her over myself." Elena's blood ran cold, but she understood. This was the price: absolute accountability in exchange for life. "Then it's decided," Lord Nightshade said. "Miss Elena Raines is recognized as an affiliate of House Bloodworth, bound by standard confidentiality agreements and subject to council oversight. Lord Bloodworth will submit formal documentation within 3 days. This council is adjourned." The vampires rose as one. Lady Ravencroft approached first, moving with inhuman grace. "That was well played, Miss Raines," she said, her voice like music. "Few mortals could stand before this council and negotiate their own survival. You have a talent for reading power dynamics." She smiled, showing teeth. "Should you ever wish to discuss employment opportunities, House Ravencroft values creative minds. I'll keep that in mind." Elena managed. Lady Thorne was next. She circled Elena slowly, studying her like a curious cat. "You're either brilliant or suicidal. I haven't decided which." She stopped in front of Elena, close enough that Elena could see her own reflection in those red eyes. "My son Sebastian will want to meet you. He collects interesting mortals like some people collect art. Try not to encourage him, he's impulsive." "I'll be careful." "See that you are." Lady Thorne glanced at Caspian. "And you, I hope she's worth the gamble. Because you've just made House Bloodworth relevant again. People will be watching. Some will test you to see if you've truly regained your edge. Don't disappoint them." She swept out without waiting for a response. Lord Nightshade approached last, his mercury eyes unreadable. "I know everything about you, Miss Raines. Your browsing history, your medical records, your 3rd-grade report card, every digital footprint you've ever left." He said it conversationally, without threat. "I'm telling you this not to frighten you, but to make expectations clear. If you betray our confidence, if you post on social media, if you tell a friend, if you write a journal entry about vampires, I will know. And the agreement we just made will be void." Elena met his gaze steadily. "Understood. Good." He turned to Caspian. "That was impressive leverage. Though I suspect much of it was bluff. Was it?" Caspian smiled coldly. "Would you like to find out?" Lord Nightshade laughed, a dry, mirthless sound. "No, wouldn't. Which is why you're still alive." He walked toward the exit, then paused. "One more thing, Bloodworth. Isabel's death wasn't your fault. It was politics, cruel, necessary politics. Don't let guilt over the past destroy what you've built here." Then he was gone, leaving only Lady Sable. She stood by her chair, radiating hatred. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "The council may have voted to spare her, but I haven't forgotten what you did. 7 vampires. My entire bloodline. Erase because you couldn't control your rage. They murdered an innocent woman, Caspian said, his voice deadly calm. Under my protection. In my territory. That wasn't politics, Cordelia, that was a declaration of war. And you rebuilt Sable on their ashes. So forgive me if I don't feel guilty about removing murderers from existence. She was just immortal. Lady Sable spat. She was mine. The word came out raw, possessive. And no one takes what's mine without consequences. Lady Sable's eyes flicked to Elena. Is this one yours too? Because if she is, you've just painted a target on her back. Every vampire who wants to hurt you now knows exactly how to do it. Let them try, Caspian said. I've had a century to prepare for round 2. Lady Sable smiled, cold, cruel, patient. So have I. She left, and suddenly the great hall felt enormous and empty. Elena's legs went weak. The adrenaline that had been holding her upright drained away all at once, and she swayed. Caspian caught her, his cool hands steadying her. Easy. You did beautifully. But you're crashing now. It's normal. Did that really just happen? Elena's voice shook. Did I just negotiate with vampires? You didn't just negotiate. You won. There was something like pride in his voice. They voted unanimously to let you live. That never happens. The council hasn't agreed on anything unanimously in 40 years. Lady Sable hates me. Lady Sable hates everyone. Especially me. He guided her toward the exit. But she voted yes, which means she won't kill you. She might make your life difficult, but she won't break council judgment. She can't afford to. They stepped out into the night air, and Elena breathed deeply, trying to steady herself. The Rolls-Royce waited, engine purring. Take us home, Caspian told the driver. Home. The word echoed strangely. Bloodworth House wasn't Elena's home, not really. But it was the closest thing she had right now. They rode in silence for several minutes before Elena spoke. You called Isabel yours. Was she? Were you in love with her? Caspian stared out the window at the passing city. I thought I was. Or maybe I just loved having someone who saw me as more than a monster. She was brilliant, kind, fearless. She made 4 centuries of loneliness bearable. His jaw tightened. And I got her killed because I couldn't let her go. Couldn't turn her. Couldn't release her. Couldn't do anything except hold on and hope the other houses would respect my claim. They should have. Should have doesn't matter in vampire politics. Only power matters. And I wasn't powerful enough to protect her. He finally looked at Elena. Tonight, I became powerful again. But only because you were brave enough to stand in front of the council and demand your own survival. I couldn't have done that alone. Elena's throat tightened. You would have released all those secrets. Started a war. For me. Yes. Why? Caspian was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm tired of losing people. Because you reminded me what it feels like to care whether someone lives or dies. Because he stopped, struggling with words. Because in 2 days, you've made me feel more human than I have in 100 years. And I'm terrified. That means history is about to repeat itself. The vulnerability in his voice made Elena's chest ache. She reached across the seat, taking his cool hand in hers. Then we'll change history, she said. Together, his fingers closed around hers, careful and tentative, as if he'd forgotten how to accept comfort. They arrived back at Bloodworth House near dawn. Caspian looked exhausted, more tired than Elena had ever seen him, as if the confrontation had drained something essential from him. You should rest, Elena said as they entered the library. I should. I won't. He moved to the cabinet, poured himself a glass of deep red liquid blood. Elena realized. He drank it mechanically, without pleasure. There's work to do. Documentation to prepare. Security to arrange. Lady Sable wasn't bluffing about you being a target. Now, Caspian, I need to keep you safe. That's all that matters. He set down the glass, his movements sharp with barely controlled tension. I failed, Isabel. I won't fail you. Elena crossed to him, placing a hand on his arm. He froze at the contact. You didn't fail, Isabel, she said firmly. You loved her. You protected her as long as you could. What happened wasn't your fault, it was theirs. The houses who killed her. Don't let them make you believe otherwise. She died in this room. His voice was hollow. Right where you're standing. I found her here. Throat torn out, blood everywhere. And I couldn't. He stopped, jaw clenched. I couldn't even hold her. She was already cold. Elena's heart shattered. Without thinking, she stepped closer and wrapped her arms around him. Caspian went rigid with shock. Then slowly, his arms came up around her, holding her with desperate carefulness. As if she might break, they stood like that for a long moment, a vampire and immortal, clinging to each other in the room where love had died a century ago. I won't let that happen again, Caspian whispered against her hair. I swear it. Elena held him tighter, feeling his cool skin through his shirt. The absence of a heartbeat where hers hammered. Then let's make sure we both survive this, she said. Outside, dawn broke over Ashenmoor. And in the shadows of the old quarter, something moved, watching, waiting. The game had changed. But it wasn't over, not even close. Chapter 10. Dawn of a New Covenant 3. Weeks passed in careful routine. Elena stayed at Bloodworth House while Caspian prepared the formal documentation for the council. She learned the rhythms of living with a vampire, his night-focused schedule, the way he moved through the house in absolute silence, the careful distance he maintained even as they grew closer. Mrs. Chen arrived twice weekly, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She brought groceries, clean linens, and a grandmother's protective concern that made Elena's chest ache. You're good for him, Mrs. Chen said one afternoon, folding laundry in the kitchen while Elena chopped vegetables. I haven't seen him this present in years. Like he's actually living instead of just existing. He's good for me too, Elena admitted. He makes me feel safe, really safe. For the first time in months, Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly. My grandmother used to say the same thing about him. That's why our family serves Bloodworth, because when Lord Caspian gives his protection, he means it, even when it costs him everything. The nights were when everything changed. Caspian taught Elena about vampire culture, not just politics, but art, music, history from perspectives she'd never imagined. He showed her his collection of first edition books, played her recordings of music from vanished eras, shared stories of London before the Great Fire, of Paris during the Revolution, of a world that existed only in memory now. And Elena taught him about the modern world he'd withdrawn from. She showed him social media, streaming services, the way technology had reshaped human connection. She played him contemporary music, shared memes that made him laugh, an honest, surprised laugh that transformed his face. I forgot, he said one night, still smiling at a video she'd shown him. I forgot that joy could be this simple. They didn't talk about what was building between them. Didn't name the way his eyes lingered on her face, or the way her pulse quickened when he entered a room. It hung unspoken in the air, dangerous, impossible, inevitable. Then Marcus reappeared. Elena was walking home from a coffee shop in the old quarter. She'd finally felt safe enough to venture out during daylight when she saw him across the street. He looked terrible, thinner, with shadows under his eyes, his clothes rumpled. When their eyes met, he started toward her. Elena's blood turned to ice. She pulled out her phone, ready to call Caspian, but Marcus stopped 10 feet away. Please, he said, his voice hoarse. Just let me talk. 5 minutes. You have nothing to say that I want to hear. I know what I did was. He stopped, rubbing his face. I've been seeing a therapist since that night. I couldn't remember what happened after you ran. Just waking up in an alley hours later, terrified. But I remembered hitting you. And I've been trying to understand how I became that person. Elena's grip on her phone tightened. Good for you. That doesn't undo what you did. No, it doesn't. Marcus looked at the ground. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I needed you to know that I'm getting help. That I understand now what I was doing, the controlling, the isolation, the gaslighting. And I'm sorry. You deserve so much better. Elena studied him. He looked genuinely broken, not the manipulative version of broken he'd performed before, but actually shattered. Thank you for saying that, she said finally. But we're done, Marcus. Completely. Don't contact me again. Don't come near me. Move on with your life, and let me move on with mine. He nodded slowly. Okay. He started to walk away, then turned back. That night, in the alley, was there really someone else there? I keep having these dreams about red eyes, and he shook his head. Never mind. I sound crazy. You're not crazy, Elena said carefully. You were concussed. Trauma does strange things to memory. Talk to your therapist about it. Marcus nodded again and walked away, shoulders hunched. Elena watched him go, feeling a strange combination of relief and sadness. He was getting help. That was good. But he'd never really understand what had happened that night, and she could never tell him. She walked back to Bloodworth House in the late afternoon sun. thinking about secrets and the weight of carrying them. Caspian was in the library when she arrived, reading by the light of a single lamp, curtains drawn against the day. Marcus found me, Elena said, without preamble. Caspian's head snapped up, his body going predator still. Where? Outside the coffee shop. He didn't try anything, just apologized. Said he's in therapy. She sat across from him. I think he actually meant it. Do you want me to ensure he stays away? No, I think he will. He looked broken, like he finally understood what he'd become. Elena pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. It's strange. A month ago, he was my whole world. Now he's just someone I used to know. Someone who hurt me, yes, but also someone who's trying to do better. Caspian set his book aside. You're more generous than I'd be, because you've lived long enough to hold grudges forever? Because I understand that some people don't change. They just get better at hiding. But his voice was gentle. Though I hope, for his sake, you're right. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Elena asked the question that had been building for weeks. What happens now? The council agreed to let me live. The documentation is filed. My life can go back to. What exactly? Caspian's expression became carefully neutral. You return to your apartment, find a new job, resume your mortal life. That was the agreement. And us? There is no us, Elena. There can't be. But his voice cracked slightly on the words. You're mortal. I'm not. You'll age, change, eventually die. I'll stay exactly as I am, watching it happen, unable to stop it. That's not a relationship, it's prolonged grief. So you're just going to send me away? After everything? I'm going to keep you alive. He stood, pacing, which means maintaining appropriate distance. Being your protector. Not your. He stopped. Not anything else. Elena stood too, anger rising. That's a coward's answer. It's a practical answer. It's you being terrified of getting hurt again. Of losing someone you care about. She moved closer. I get it, Caspian. I do. But pushing me away now doesn't change that you already care. It just means you'll be alone again when you don't have to be. You don't understand what you're asking for. Then explain it to me. Stop protecting me from information and just be honest. Caspian spun to face her, and Elena saw raw pain in his red eyes. I'm asking myself every single day if I should turn you. If I should offer you immortality, make you vampire, keep you with me forever. And every day, I remember what that life costs. The hunger, the isolation, watching the world change while you stay frozen. I won't curse you with that existence. I won't make you into what I am. What if I want that choice? You don't. You think you do, because you're grateful, because I saved you, because we've grown close. But that's not love, Elena, that's trauma bonding. And I won't make an irreversible decision based on temporary feelings. Elena's throat tightened. You think what I feel is temporary? I think you're 26 and surviving trauma. I think in 5 years, you'll have a career, friends, maybe someone who can give you a normal life. Children, if you want them, sunlight, aging, all the things that make existence meaningful. His voice dropped. I can't give you any of that. All I can offer is darkness. What if I choose the darkness anyway? Then I'll remind you of this conversation, Caspian said quietly. And I'll tell you no, because I care about you too much to let you make that mistake. Elena felt tears burning her eyes. So what? We just pretend the last month didn't happen. I go back to my life, and you go back to yours. And we never see each other again? No, he moved closer, and Elena saw his composure cracking. You live under my protection. We maintain professional contact documentation, security updates, council business. And over time, as you build your life, as you heal from everything Marcus did, this intensity will fade. You'll remember me as the vampire who helped you once. And that will be enough. That's not enough for me. It has to be. Caspian's voice broke. Because the alternative is watching you die. And I can't. He stopped, jaw clenched. I can't survive that again. I barely survived it with Isabel. If I let myself love you, really love you, and then lose you, he shook his head. I wouldn't come back from that. I'd burn the world down and not care about the consequences. Elena understood. Then, this wasn't rejection, it was terror. He was so afraid of losing her that he wouldn't let himself have her. She crossed the distance between them and took his face in her hands. His skin was cool beneath her palms, but his eyes were blazing. Then don't lose me, she said. Fight for me. Fight for us. Not forever. Not with promises we can't keep, but right now, today, this moment. Elena, she kissed him. For one heartbeat, he was frozen. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with 400 years of loneliness and longing behind it. His lips were cool, his touch careful as if she might shatter. But Elena pressed closer, showing him she wasn't fragile, she was strong enough for this. Strong enough for him. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Caspian rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he whispered. Probably, I'll hurt you. Or lose you. Or both. Maybe. Or maybe we'll figure it out. Elena smiled. One day at a time. No promises about forever. Just now. Caspian pulled back slightly, studying her face. Then he smiled, genuine, warm, almost human. One day at a time, he agreed. Starting with today. Outside, the sun set over Ashenmoor. In the distance, church bells rang. The city moved on, mortal and immortal alike, carrying their secrets. And in Bloodworth House, in a library where love had died once, it was being given a second chance. Not a fairy tale. Not a guarantee. Just two damaged people choosing to face the darkness together. It would be enough. The end.